destination. Darkness is quite near your feet and senses through your ears. And tide is rising, drought is non-existent. Sins are washed away, all the faults that you were facing. Sunset chaser, where's your new location? Searching for a purpose, the truth is making you nervous. And sunlight's waiting, there's a happy ending. Picture perfect skies, does your life have any meaning? Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you. Daylight saver till the next adventure. Love is all around, but you're focused on your frowning. Rays are burning, achy luminescence, feeling through the gloom, tense and patient for its blooming. Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you.
Sunny sea, there's no point of being me, as the night took my innocence. I'm starting to see there's no mention of happiness. Life I possess, I offer it to you as you banish regret. In my heart, tape mouth, I can't hardly speak. Tracks of my tears slipped away. I am weak as I sing this last melody. Set your own rest. Sunny song is my final request.
Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you.
Aloha. Welcome to the 41st Annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Halekulani and our conversation with Stanley Kwan, our 2021 Spotlight on Hong Kong Filmmaker and Profile. We just presented a 4K restoration of his seminal film Lan Yu, which originally screened at HIFF over 20 years ago. We're also screening Center Stage, starring Maggie Cheung, that is currently streaming on our HIFF Selects virtual cinema. My name is Anderson Lay, and I'm the Artistic Director of HIFF. We would like to extend our thanks to Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office of San Francisco for sponsoring this section and this live streaming conversation. Before we start, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Jacko Sang, Director of the HKETO San Francisco, to say a few words.
Aloha, Anderson and Stanley. Thank you, HIFF, for honoring Stanley Kwan, one of the most iconic film directors in Hong Kong, in this year's Filmmaker in Profile. In addition to Lan Yu, of which there is an in-person screening at this festival, Stanley has directed many classics like Rouge, Center Stage, and First Night Nerves, just to name a few. Stanley, a director who stays true to himself, is also keen to nurture Hong Kong's next generation of filmmakers. He recently worked with Sasha Chuk, a winner of the 6th edition of the First Feature Film Initiative, a program to identify new talents through a competition on screenplay and production proposals. Stanley also worked on the Director Succession Scheme, where qualified directors are invited to partner with 1 to 2 young directors to co-produce films. The scheme encourages seasoned directors to groom young talents and to enhance the quality and quantity of local film productions in Hong Kong. Each of those films is granted with a subsidy. Around $12.8 million were earmarked to subsidize 10 to 12 film productions. Another $1 million was earmarked to encourage scriptwriters to produce high-quality scripts. All these programs are effort made by the Hong Kong SAR government to support film development and talent nurturing. We hope more fine productions will be materialized and that audience will be able to enjoy them soon. Thank you all for supporting Hong Kong cinema. I wish HIFF every success in this hybrid film festival and hope we will meet in person in 2022. Thank you.
Just a quick reminder, for this live stream conversation, the audience can type in their questions for Director Kwan in the comments section of, if you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube or on CineSend, our streaming platform on HIFF. And we can start asking these questions at the 45-minute mark of this conversation. So, please leave your questions. Start leaving your questions in the comment section on those different streams. Now, I would like to introduce our moderator, Crystal Kwok. Crystal is an award-winning filmmaker who established her career in Hong Kong as an actress, writer, director, and talk show host. She won the Audience Choice Awards at the 2000 Deauville Asian Film Festival for her debut feature-length film, The Mistress. As a strong women's advocate, her talk show on cable TV and RTHK Radio 3 Kwok Talk broke boundaries in Hong Kong with conversations about women and sexuality. Having moved back to American soil after being overseas for a couple of decades, Kwok now embraces issues close to home, that of her Asian American heritage. Kwok is currently a PhD student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in Performance Studies and a recipient of the prestigious East-West Center Scholar Awards. She also hosts a radio talk show and podcasts addressing racial and gender issues with a multicultural perspective. She is currently in post-production on a documentary feature exploring her grandmother's past growing up in the Jim Crow South, where untold stories unveil a unique connection between the Chinese and Black communities, and in doing so, unleash some ugly truths about our country's racial structure. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Crystal Kwok.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. 大家好，你哋喺香港又好，三藩市、Hawaii 都大家 we're all here together for a very intimate and wonderful conversation with Director Stanley Kwan. So it's my pleasure to introduce them. So before we start our conversation, I'd just like to give a little bit of background, and Kevin is here to help us to translate whatever's necessary. So thank you, Kevin. Okay, so we're going to start with just knowing that Director Kwan was born in Hong Kong. He's a Hong Kong boy who landed a job at TVB after receiving a mass communications degree at the Hong Kong Baptist University, Zhangwei. Kwan's first film was called Woman in 1985, which starred Zhao Yunfat and was a big box office success. First film. And then comes Rouge. As Jacko had mentioned, Rouge was a beautiful film. And I had just moved to Hong Kong at that time when that film came out. And it was like, wow, these are Hong Kong films. It's just, you know, this is a very special time for Hong Kong films. This was 1987, and Director Kwan received the Best Director Award at the Hong Kong Film Awards for this film. His other films, including many, but I don't have enough time to do that, would include Full Moon in New York, which was in 1989, Center Stage, which is screening at the HIFF Festival in 1992. There was Red Rose, White Rose in 94, which was an adaptation of a very famous Eileen Zhang novel. And also the other one that is screening, as Anderson had said, is Lan Yu, in 2001, which won Best Director Award at the Golden Horse Film Festival in Taiwan. So director Stanley Kwan is an incredibly sensitive and prolific filmmaker if you have seen his films. His films often explore themes of love, sexuality, desire, and often centering stories around women and non-binary men. So not only do his films breathe space into the very intimate lives of the characters in his films also represent, I think, an act of resistance to the dominant narratives, especially under a very male-dominated structure and society in Hong Kong. And so I wanted to kick off our conversation with perhaps a director giving us a little bit of background. Douyin, can you just share with us, thank you for coming, share what it was like growing up in Hong Kong and what shaped you as a child that might have influenced your creative mind? Was there something that we don't know about your childhood that might have influenced the way you shape your films?
咁但係父母咧，我係屋企五個仔女最大嘅，即係我係大仔嚟。
I was the eldest son in the family. My mother had 5 children, and I was the eldest.
咁我父母其實原來即係都係好傳統嘅思想。我係得到入香港一間好有名嘅學校，而我啲細佬妹得唔到。
My parents are actually very traditional, and I myself got into a very elite school while my siblings didn't.
特別我爸爸好早逝啦，我記得我14歲嘅時候，我爸爸就過身啦。咁對我媽媽嚟講，更加緊要嘅就係佢覺得呢個大仔某個程度應該變咗係父親咁睇住啲細佬妹。
So my father passed away when I was very young, actually when I was 14. So my mother believed that me as the eldest son should take up the figure of the father in the family.
即係我要做個男人咯，嚇。咁但係同時間我嗰陣時係已經感覺到自己個 sexuality 嗰樣嘢，我對男人啊、男體啊嗰樣嘢有我自己越嚟越清楚，所以你話呢個係咪一個好有趣嘅即係組合啊？即係你喺屋企你要做大哥，唔止做大哥，你要做爸爸，但係問題你自己又知道自己個 sexuality 你係需要有個男人喺你身邊咁喎。
So, in other words, I had to be the man of the house, but at the same time, I began to have a clear idea of my sexuality that I longed for men. So, at home, I had to be the big brother, and even more to be the father. But yet, at the same time, I also wanted to be with men. So that was actually quite an interesting combination.
我記得我第2個妹妹同我第3個妹妹咧。一拍拖識到佢哋嘅生命當中第一個男人就結婚啦。我第3個妹妹甚至嫁到去美國添。
So my second and third sisters both married their first boyfriends. In fact, my 第三個妹妹我
係，
嫁咗美國係。So my third sister, in fact, moved to America after she got married.
所以你諗下，即係我其實同啲兄弟姊妹嘅關係，喺我一個咁嘅環境底下，佢哋甚至覺得父母唔公平。呢個大哥我哋唔係要一個咁嘅大哥嚟嘅，即係所以佢哋我第二個妹妹、第三個妹妹，佢哋覺得唔公平咯，佢哋要離開呢個屋企咯，所以一識咗第一個男朋友就結婚離開屋企，咁我感受到佢哋嘅唔開心嘅。
So my siblings thought that this was an unfair situation. They didn't want a big brother like myself. So my second and my third sisters, they wanted to leave so badly that they married their first boyfriends and left home. I could tell that this was an unhappy environment.
So can I ask
Yeah.
you? Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, 繼續啦，你想講埋先。
你問啦。
Okay, I just wanted to say, because you're saying that, in your family upbringing, your siblings, your family all had to follow the structure of what was expected of them, but you defied it, you resisted that. And somehow that character, your kind of in a way shapes the way you found resistance through filmmaking.
即係話你家庭係其實跟一個好傳統嘅一個結構，咁但係同時間你自己係咪當你抗拒呢一個傳統嘅結構，係咪有冇影響到你點樣拍電影咧？
我覺得好有趣嘅地方，我讀嘅香港讀嘅係培正中學，培正係好出名基督教學校，咁所以我由初中開始啊，到高中啊咁。我都係 suppose 即係我有返教會，我有參加團契，有唱詩歌班。我覺得自己係基督徒咯，但係即係我自己睇返我自己嗰段時間嘅生活，好彩我冇受洗，即係我覺得我已經嗰個。質疑我自己，甚至咩？譬如聖經啟示錄，我每日讀經祈禱咁，但係你睇到啟示錄嘅聖經啟示錄話不可貪戀藍色嚇，咁嗰樣嘢其實有好多個 struggle 喺裏邊嘅。咁我仲係咪基督徒咧？我應唔應該返教會咧？我應唔應該參加詩歌班咧？我相信屋企好，學校好，都喺我成長嘅階段俾咗好多情況係我自己一路問自己問題嘅。
So I went to Pui Ching. It's a very elite school, and actually it's also a very religious school. In fact, I was a Christian for a while. I attended church. I sang gospel music in a chorus. I did all of that stuff. But thankfully, one thing I didn't do was I wasn't baptized. But at the same time, I kept questioning myself. I kept asking myself that, because in Revelations, in Bible, it says that men should not lie with other men. So I kept asking myself, am I still a Christian? Do I still attend church? Should I keep singing gospel music? So this process, it gave me a lot of chances to question things, to ask questions.
即係我問過我媽媽，我話你咁辛苦帶5個仔女，爸爸死咗之後，點解你唔改嫁咧？揾個另外一個男人，佢冇，因為我哋爸爸嗰邊係一個大嘅家族嚟嘅。其實我哋住嘅地方係我嗰啲姑媽做二房東嘅，所以我媽媽覺得我點解要咁樣衰俾佢哋睇啊？我自己能夠一日做2份工，湊大5個，呢個係我做嘅。我唔要喺佢哋面前丟架去改嫁另外一個男人。 呢個係即係佢就倔強。後尾到我真係有問過我媽媽嘅，點解你唔改嫁啫？嗰陣時咁辛苦，一日做2份工，日頭一份，夜晚一份。
So I did ask my mother, you have to raise 5 kids. Why didn't you remarry? Because my father came from a large family. In fact, where we lived when we were children, my aunts were the landlord. So my mother, strong-willed as she is, she didn't want to falter in front of them. She had to work 2 jobs. She had to raise all 5 of us. She didn't want to lose face in front of them. So that's something she very insisted on. In fact, I did ask her why she never remarried, why she went through such a tough time raising 5 kids, but that was her answer.
So I'm sure being, yeah.
Sorry.
No, because you have a strong mother role, and your perception of your mother and women is probably strong in your life. And in a lot of the films you made, like in Center Stage, when you talk about The Goddess, which is the remake of the Yun Ling Yuk story, you focus on strong women. And I wonder how much the influence of the women in your life influenced the way you treated the way these women characters were portrayed in the films.
Okay.
Kevin, 你講俾我聽，我聽得懂嘅，但係你再清楚啲，等我答得準確啲，希望。
OK， 即係導演嘅生活裏邊，有咁強悍嘅媽媽，咁佢嗰度同埋其他嘅女人，有冇影響到你？例如喺《阮玲玉》裏邊，點樣去portray 呢啲女性嘅角色，作為即係成一啲好強悍嘅角色咧，有冇影響到呢樣嘢？
必然啦，我覺得呢個唔單止阮玲玉啊，包括胭脂扣，剛才提到胭脂扣咁，好老實講，響30年代嗰段故事，貌似張國榮嘅媽媽去干預咗佢哋嘅嗰段感情，令到梅艷芳知難而退，咁帶咗12少張國榮離開屋企。但係其實好快，梅艷芳何嘗唔係扮演緊張國榮另一個媽媽咧？嗰隻強勢，嗰隻毒簽子，嗰隻買西裝俾佢嘅時候，對一個咁樣比較怯懦嘅男人嚟講，佢只不過係一個後生啲嘅張國榮12少媽媽嚟嘅咋，即係佢要 control 佢啊！你明唔明啊？即係所以嗰樣嘢。響一個嗰隻 complex 好有趣，你可以揾好多理由、好多藉口俾自己話我係對佢好嘅，我係咩？但係其實好多係 control 同埋嗰隻 obsess 嘅嘢咯。
So it's not just in Center Stage. In fact, you also see in Rouge, in the 1930s section of the film, you see the Anita Mui characters, Fleur and Leslie Chen's 12th Master. Their relationship is interfered by 12th Master's mother, who want to separate them. But then, of course, they eloped. And after that, you see Fleur buying 12th Master a suit. And that actually, you can see her sort of becoming a younger version of 12th Master's mother, in that she wanted to exert control over him. You can say that, she just been really caring for him, but in some way, it is her way of exerting control over him. So, the idea of complex is very interesting. It's kind of like a obsession.
所以阮玲玉好，胭脂扣好，紅玫瑰、白玫瑰，哪怕係改編嘅都好啦。即係我願意見到我自己戲裏邊嘅女性角色咧，係有足夠嘅強度嘅。但係問題喺個強度嘅裏邊，我又希望揾到好多 layers， 睇到其實佢哋好多遮掩緊或者掩飾緊，或者用一個強嘅嘢嚟遮蓋佢哋自己嘅 witness。
So you see that in Center Stage, in Rouge, even in Red Rose, White Rose, even though that was an adaptation, that I like to see female characters with a lot of strength. But within that strength, beneath it, I also like to portray multiple layers. For example, that underneath that strength is actually a way to hide their weaknesses.
And can we just, you mentioned Rouge, and for a lot of the listeners who maybe have not seen this film, which I highly recommend, Anita Mui stars in it, and there actually is a new film that's being screened at HIFF about Anita Mui's story. Can we take this small opportunity for Director Kwan to maybe share a little about your relationship, your thoughts on a strong woman like Anita? What was it like working with her? Because we have another film that's celebrating her life. Maybe you can share something in working with such a strong character, because I remember in that you had to work around because she's so strong that you had to strip something away for her to embody this character in the film. Maybe can you share that?
即係簡單講一個就係梅艷芳係好少喺我拍過嘅演員裏邊合作過嘅演員裏邊啦。我記得梅艷芳係少有地，我諗甚至係唯一一個可能半夜2點鐘、3點鐘打俾我㗎。阿關你未瞓我瞓就瞓咗啦，不過冇所謂啊，我哋傾偈啊咁。佢未必一定講一啲好唔開心嘅嘢，佢未必一定針對一件令佢唔開心嘅事同我傾偈。佢總之係有個人同佢傾下偈。眾多同我合作嘅演員，梅艷芳係唯一一個。所以我覺得即係呢個打電話嗰樣嘢咧，係拍緊戲到拍完戲之後，我做緊後期啊咁。所以其實嗰個已經唔係淨係一個導演同一個演員，係朋友咯，我覺得。
So among all the actors I worked with, I think Anita is the only one who would call me in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and ask to talk. I mean, I may have been asleep, but I was still awake to talk to her. She may not always be calling to vent about unhappy things, but she just wanted to talk to someone. And this happened through production and even post-production. So I think that my relationship with Anita went beyond the relationship of a director and an actor. I think we were friends.
Can we talk a little bit about the idea of the new woman, Sun Loi-sing? Because this idea in the film that Yoon Ling-yuk starred in, that in center stage you have Maggie to reenact, right? There is that reenactment. But what I want to say is that a lot of people may not know the history of the concept of the new woman, of this revolutionary, this post-revolutionary image of a woman in this very, very patriarchal society who at this point feels like there is a progressive time to have voice and to challenge the existing society norms. It was a very important time. And so through a lot of your films like Yoon Ling-yuk and Yin Zikao and all those films are set in the 30s of this type of woman. Can you maybe share how you feel about this idea of the woman's position and how it's changed throughout like Chinese history and why that's so important to you?
我覺得好有趣。你提新女性，即係喺阮玲玉裏邊，到最後阮玲玉基本上佢係最後演嘅戲啦。佢演嘅角色亦都係一個女明星叫偉明。蔡楚生係用咗偉明嘅古仔，一個女明星自殺嘅古仔，但係到最後一刻佢求生，佢希望佢唔要死，嗰樣嘢嚟變咗新女性嘅劇本嘅。但係當然偉明結果都係自殺死咗啦。蔡楚生只係用佢嘅古仔嚟感嘆嗰陣時嘅女人嗰隻乏力啊， 嗰隻對個社會啊，對好多嘢發聲都冇地方俾佢發聲嗰樣嘢。
So the film New Woman is interesting that you bring it up because that film it tells a story of another actress named Wei Ming. That was Ronnie Yu's final film, by the way. And in that film, that character also commits suicide in the end. Although at the very, very final moment, she struggled for life. She seeked to stay alive, but of course, at the end, she still died. So the director, Sai Chushen, wanted to use that story to show the helplessness of women in that period, that their lack of a lack of chance to even speak up, to voice their own, to voice what they wanted.
阮玲玉演慧明嘅時候，我哋睇阮玲玉嘅傳記啊等等，佢好願意去演呢個角色，因為佢好同情慧明呢個人物。
So in the film, you read the story Running You see that Ron really wanted to play this character because she sympathized with the story of Wei Ming.
So Center Stage is a very interesting film because you are playing with different styles. Yes, you have the kind of behind the scenes, the making of the film. You have moments where you do in black and white where the actors are supposedly not acting, right? They are themselves and they're speaking to you on a very casual basis, trying to discover who Yun Ling is, trying to make sense of the story. And then you have the reenactments of the original story, and then you put in the archival images of the original film. So there's a lot of elements going on in this film, which makes it very interesting, sometimes confusing to some people. But what is your what would you like to share about the relationship between fact and fiction? Because you're blending two things. It's a narrative film, and yet some places you allow the actuality, like the documentary style, to carry on. So you're blending two things, and why? And share.
首先我覺得面對阮玲玉一個咁嘅人物，即係我要改編要拍阮玲玉個故仔嘅時候，首先我唔甘心就咁拍一個即係好傳統嘅一個女明星，然之後一個三角關係，佢同佢兩個男人嘅關係，咁然之後到最後人言可畏自殺，咁就完。我唔甘心。
So when I was taking on the story Running You, I refused, or I didn't want to just tell a traditional biopic, a traditional story of how Running You was caught in a love triangle and then she commits suicide because of gossip. I didn't want to just tell the story traditionally.
你話我阮玲玉嘅資料搜集我做咗2年，喺上海無論北京、上海，我走訪咗訪問咗好多30年代嘅影人，好似孫瑜導演啦，阮玲玉嘅作家啦，黎莉莉演員黎莉莉、陳燕燕等等等等。我覺得成個我嗰日同影評人阿登圖傾偈，佢話佢覺得華語電影係2個黃金時代，一個就係30、40年代嘅上海電影，另外一個就係80、90年代嘅香港電影。所以我覺得90年代初嘅時候，我越做資料搜集嘅時候，越覺得30年代嘅電影人好了不起。
So I did about 2 years of research for this film. I went to Beijing, Shanghai, all over the place to speak to people who were in the film industry in the 1930s, including directors and Li Li and Chen Yan, like actors. And I was speaking with a film critic friend, and he said that Chinese cinema went through 2 golden eras. the Shanghai films in the 1930s and the 1940s, and the Hong Kong cinema in 1980s and the 90s. So while I was doing research in the early 90s, the more research I did, the more impressed I was by these people who worked in the film industry in the 1930s.
所以我有感覺係對30年代嗰班上海嘅電影人嚟一個用我套戲嚟俾個 tribute 佢哋嘅。
So I want to use my film to pay tribute to these people who worked in the film industry in Shanghai in 1930s.
但係同時
So
另外
there's
一
a
樣嘢
scene.
有 ，Yeah, please.
繼續啦，導演。I just want to say in the center. Sorry, in Yun Ling Yuk, there is one scene where Leung Ka-fei, as the director, is asked to cut out a certain scene, yeah, that they felt was sensitive to the media, and that he had to apologize for offending the journalist, yeah, the 記者叫佢剪嗰 part. So it made me think about the censorship and the oftentimes in many films, as a filmmaker, you might come across bigger powers that don't want you to treat it a certain way. Like they want you to cut out certain things. Have you experienced that, you know, where you had to sacrifice, really want the whoever is in this, you know, the political nature of framing, you know, of what you allow to be inside the frame and what's left outside that we don't see. So are there some important things that have been cut out of some of your films that you felt, oh, you know, is so painful to cut out, and why you do that for the sake of, you know, the political relationship with whoever is telling you to censor yourself?
阿 Kevin 你翻面啊？
我想問就係因為佢諗起就係阮玲玉有一場戲就係講導演佢嗰套戲就被 censor 一件事啦。咁你自己有冇遇過一啲情況就係話你亦都因為一啲審查嘅原因而要剪走刪走一啲嘢咧？你有冇呢啲咁嘅經驗咧
？So far 我冇經驗過呢啲冇呢個經驗啦。So far 我冇。
So far I haven't experienced something like that.
即係哪怕即係
So even with
藍宇就係即係唔係一個地下電影嚟㗎啦，即係唔係話攞晒 censor 攞晒咩拍㗎啦。
I mean, Lanyu was
underground film.
Yeah, it was an underground film. So we didn't obtain any approval whatsoever to shoot that film.
Yeah, but can we talk about Lam Yu now? Because Lam Yu was a very bold film at the time, but at the same time, you may not have been able to do that film today. Do you agree? Is that something that you could have done? You could only have done it then. Yeah.
導演會唔會覺得呢套只係當時先至可以拍得到嘅電影，即係可能今時今日係可能會拍唔到嘅咧？
我諗係難㗎啦。今時今日我諗無論中國大陸嘅對意識形態嘅管制啊，甚至對地下電影嗰個比較控制得比較嚴密一啲啊，嗰樣嘢係唔會發生藍雨咁嘅事㗎啦，唔可能。
Yeah, I do agree that it would be very difficult to make Lanyu today. I mean, considering that Beijing has put stronger control over film expression and underground cinema, I think that it would be very difficult, almost impossible, for Lanyu to be made today.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the theme of death? I mean, because even if we're going to focus on Center Stage and Lam Yu, they both deal with a love story and they end tragically. And I want to ask you how you feel about the treatment of death, whether death is something that represents a closure and a final, an ending, or is it a beginning of something? And these characters who end up tragically dying, is it because of who they represent that they needed to be erased, to have a tragic ending because of society's understandings of their place?
你講嘅係南語係嘛？係咪？
南語同埋阮玲玉都係。
其實兩個都係，係啦。係咪啊？死亡呢個主題。
其實死亡嘅主題喺我嘅電影裏邊咧，都即係你由兩心地下情嚇，然之後都充斥住一啲死亡嘅氣味嘅。阮玲玉咁啱，即係佢嗰個，我覺得佢嘅自殺，佢話。佢嘅人言可畏，佢演員偉明嘅角色，佢同情偉明呢個 characters， 但係佢都結果係要選擇自殺呢樣嘢咧。對我嚟講，因為呢樣嘢唔喺劇本上面，我唔能夠去改變佢嘅。阮玲玉佢真係服當然有時，但係有趣嘅地方係。當我有咗啲紀錄片嘅時候咧，其實啲紀錄片咧係偽紀錄片嚟嘅。所有張曼玉、劉嘉玲啲訪問，包括張曼玉有點睇阮玲玉嘅自殺嗰啲，全部係 scripted 嘅嘢嚟嘅。所以變咗，我覺得最有趣嘅地方就係話，阮玲玉演偉明。張曼玉演阮玲玉，但係今日張曼玉跳翻出個角色去睇自己嘅時候，我點樣去死啫？即係 I really don't care， 即係你話嗰啲 gossip 啊、咩 blackmail 啊，所有嘢對佢嚟講唔重要
So actually, death was something that I touched on even in my early films, including Woman, Love on Two Ways, Rouge as well. But in Center Stage, the idea that Ronnie Yu sympathized with Wei Ming, the character in New Woman, and yet she herself committed suicide as well because of the gossip. That's fact. I couldn't change that. That's factual. So I couldn't change that. But something I do want to bring up is that the documentary scenes in Center Stage, the scenes of the actors, talking about Ronnie Yu, the character, those are actually scripted. Those scenes weren't actually documentary scenes. They were actually scripted. And also, it's interesting that, you see Running Yu playing Wei Ming, and at the same time, Maggie Chen is playing Running Yu. And when you see Maggie Chen jump out of the Running Yu character and talking about Running Yu, because at the time, she was also sort of besieged by some scandals, blackmail, and you see Maggie Chen saying, I don't care, I don't care. They can blackmail me all they want. They can gossip about me all they want. So that's an interesting sort of contrast.
It's like a doubleness of real life. Yeah. 導演，
即係會重疊，即係會 double 係，即係重疊咁啊，
係。我覺得
It's like who's playing who, Like you don't 真同假呢樣嘢 like it's almost like interchanging, like what's on stage and what's behind is blurred.
我覺得電影從來就應該遊走響虛實中間嘅，即係我覺得亦應該有好多留白嘅地方係等觀眾去諗嘅。不過阮玲玉係採取咗一個形式，就係連即係套戲本身講緊個故仔嘅時候，都係用緊嗰隻進進出出，即係遊走響嗰個戲 真實嗰個明顯咗咯，比較明顯咯。
I mean, I believe that film should always be traversing between fact and fiction anyway, and that it should leave room for audience to think. It's just that in center stage, that sort of that traversing between fact and fiction, it just becomes more apparent.
I just want to remind people to ask questions. Yeah, outside. Yeah. 導演你講。
藍宇我冇覺得我藍宇到最後嘅死，我冇覺得呢個人物響個不容於嗰個時代冇嘅，即係我自己作為一個自己嘅好清楚自己 gender 嘅導演，點會覺得話呢個角色係應該不容於社會咧？我完全冇咁諗過。
As for Lan Yu, I don't think that Lan Yu's death was because he represents something that had to be erased. I mean, as a filmmaker who has a lot of concerns about gender, I mean, I would never think that Lan Yu had to be erased.
Great, thank you. And there is a question from a Trevor, and I will read out his question. He asks, Lan Yu was very taboo when it came out because of the sexuality and themes. Do you think these themes, especially the central relationship, is considered chaste now? You want to find it?
Chaste 係咩意思啊 Gavin？
Chaste 即係係咪好似點講？好似而家太禁忌咯，係咪有禁忌或者喺道德上係咪有啲禁忌咧？係啦。
嚇！到今日仲係禁忌
？Why would it be chaste? Why would it be chaste today?
Yeah.
我覺得即係應該
Maybe because of China and the way it's
藍宇，你諗下，藍宇拍咗20年前拍嘅咯喎。藍宇要睇嘅喺中國大陸要睇嘅觀眾都睇晒㗎啦，無論佢哋用咩形式睇。我覺得有朋友同我講。甚至藍宇係啟蒙，對佢哋嚟講係佢哋揾到自己個 sexuality 一個啟蒙嚟㗎啦。咁我覺得，如果今日再褪翻去話，會唔會係擔心佢一個禁忌嘅時候，我覺得我唔會咁去諗咯。即係如果要諗都20年前諗啦，唔係今日再諗。
So, Lan Yu was a film that was made 20 years ago. So those in mainland China who want to see the film, who have to see the film, who needed to see the film, they would have found their own way to see it already. In fact, I have some friends there who say that Lan Yu was an eye opener for them. It helped them discover their own sexuality. 我諗 Chase 嗰件事可能係相反，就係話會唔會覺得係而家係覺得好係好 clean 咗，即係好已經好唔係一件大件事咁嘅問題咯，即係已經係咪覺得已經唔覺得大件事啦咁咯？
呢個我同意啊，一定梗係唔係大件事啦，即係唔再係禁忌咯我覺得。
So yeah, I certainly don't think that it's chaste anymore. Of course, it's not chaste anymore. I don't think that kind of relationship is taboo anymore. Yeah. So.
但我相信響中國大陸，如果你話響佢哋個意識形態啊，各方面你要得到機會去拍一套藍宇，響今日拍一套藍宇咁都冇乜可能啦。
But at the same time, considering the environment in mainland China today, it would be impossible to make a film like Lan Yu.
我驚香港都快冇乜可能。
I'm actually also worried that it may not be possible in Hong Kong either in the future.
It's ironic because the LGBTQ communities in Asia are increasingly more acceptable on one level, and at the same time, it's kind of being pushed down again. So, we're struggling with that lack of freedom now. Yeah. I'm going to ask another question that somebody, Giancarlo, is asking. He says, I just saw Center Stage and it was lovely. Loved the mix of film style and film stock. as it was very dreamlike. What was your directorial process with Maggie Cheung to capture that elegance and star power, but also make it abstract?
哇，嗯，其實最初阮玲玉由搞劇本開始咧，係因為拍完胭脂扣，嘉禾公司希望我同梅艷芳再合作嘅，咁所以阮玲玉嘅即係有阮玲玉某個程度係話啊，我哋再拍一次關鵬，你再拍一次梅艷芳啦。
So Rouge, I mean, Center Stage came on the heels of Rouge's success. Actually, Golden Harvest wanted me to team up with Anita Mui again on another film. So that's actually how Center Stage started. It was supposed to be another collaboration with Anita Mui.
但係到後尾佢自己唔願意再返大陸做嘢，咁所以我覺得係一個和平分手嚟嘅嚇，咁然之後咁就選擇咗張曼玉。
But for personal reasons, and we didn't want to work in mainland China, so it was actually a very amicable breakup, so to speak.
我覺得張曼玉嗰陣時係，我覺得佢響我哋好明顯睇到佢響王家衞手上，旺角卡門啊、阿飛正傳啊，我覺得佢係開竅，佢喺度尋找緊一個演員嘅可能性，各種可能性。
I think at the time, if you watch Maggie Cheung in Wong Kar-wai's films like as Tears Go By and Days of Being Wild, you could see that she was an actor searching for enlightenment, searching to see what possibilities she could find within herself.
所以2年嘅資料搜集裏邊過程揾到好多嘅資料，俾張曼玉睇嘅同時，佢係好多 questions 好多問題 about 阮玲玉好啦，甚至 about 30年代嗰個電影嘅氛圍啦等等。我覺得好有趣嘅呢個。
So even though I had 2 years of research that I handed to Maggie, she still had lots of questions about Running You, about 1930 cinema. So that's something that really interested her.
所以我覺得即係我自己話我唔希望拍個傳統嘅古仔嘅阮玲玉一個女明星自殺，佢同2個男人嘅關係。我想試下嗰陣時都係揾緊一個用咩形式好組合去拍呢套電影好咧咁張曼玉嗰個好奇嗰個對阮玲玉好對30年代電影嗰樣嘢嘅佢想知道多啲嗰樣嘢係幫咗我更加覺得套戲唔應該係用一個最傳統嘅方式去拍咯。
So while I was convinced I didn't want to make Center Stage as a traditional biopic about an actress love triangle and her suicide, while putting together the cast, Maggie's curiosity also inspired me to tell this story in a non-traditional manner.
即係我覺得阮玲玉結果係用咁嘅形式去呈現出嚟咧，即係我覺得資料搜集係一樣嘢，張曼玉對演阮玲玉嘅態度，佢對阮玲玉嘅同情係一樣嘢。我對30年代電影人嘅貢獻，我覺得好想係俾個 tribute 佢哋係一樣嘢，咁樣嚟到組合嘅，所以喺劇本上面係搞好耐咯。
So Center Stage was a combination of 3 things: my wish to tell the story, Maggie's curiosity and fascination towards the character Yuan and Yu, and my wish to pay tribute to the filmmakers and people who worked in 1930s Shanghai cinema. So because of these three things, the script writing process took very, very long.
Yeah, the complexity is seen in this
Yeah.
film. We have one more question. It's a more personal question. She says, I've read that your family took you to see movies when you were very young. What were, or I guess, some of your favorite films growing up? 你細個睇咩戲啊？
哦，我媽媽其實佢帶我睇電影之餘咧，其實佢更多係帶我去睇廣東大戲。
So in actually in addition to films, my mother actually more often took me to Cantonese operas.
最有趣嘅係廣東大戲有一對拍檔咧，任劍輝、白雪仙，大家都聽過噶啦嚇。
There's quite a
好有
famous.
趣
Sorry. There's quite a famous pairing of stars in the Cantonese opera world. Yam Kim Fai and Ba Xin. They're very, very famous pairing.
我媽媽直情着迷嘅。你知道任劍輝嗰陣時紅到一個程度咧，但係佢嘅中意佢嘅係女觀眾嚟喎，明知佢係女扮男裝噶啦，但係嗰啲工廠妹啊，嗰啲打工嘅姐姐啊，咁即係送花唔單止送花啦，用銀紙接啲紙牌送俾任劍輝嘅。佢哋知嘅嚇，佢哋知任劍輝係女人嚟。
So even though women like my mother and other factory girls, they all knew that Yam Kim Fai was a woman dressed as a man. She plays a man on stage, but they saw her like the idol. They would give her all sorts of gifts. They even folded up bills into 紙牌就係電子牌，就係嗰啲like these plaques. Yeah, like these plaques. They showered her all sorts of gifts, but they knew very clear that she was a female actor playing a male character.
我記得我做嗰個紀錄片，幫英國電影協會做個男生女相 Yin and Yang 嘅時候，我問我同我媽媽喺裏邊討論過任劍輝、白雪仙嘅。佢哋嗰一代嘅人覺得佢哋份該響埋一齊，即係應該響埋一齊。佢哋係即係用咗任劍輝 as 男人嘅印象，佢哋知道佢係女人，但係佢哋覺得任劍輝應該同白雪仙一齊。
So in the film, in the documentary Yin and Yang, Gender in Chinese Cinema, which I made for BFI, I interviewed my mother about this, but she said that she believed that even though Yam Kim Fai was a woman playing a man and Ba Xin was a woman, the fans believed that they should be together.
Yeah.
所以即係我媽媽試過有一次睇嗰啲電視啲粵語殘片咧，放翻嗰啲舊片出嚟咧，咁有一套戲咧，任劍輝係演一個女人角色嘅，咁我媽媽竟然衝口而出，做乜佢扮女人啊？
So my mother was watching one of those old Cantonese black and white films on TV one night. That film had Yam Kim Fai playing a woman, a female character, and my mom actually blurted out loud, "Why is Yam Kim Fai dressed up as a woman?"
即係所以嗰個對我嚟講，即係無論面對自己嘅 gender、sexuality 等等，都提供咗即係任劍輝、白雪仙呢個組合嗰啲粵語片，我覺得係好有趣嘅。雖然我唔特別話中意，我更加中意嘅係70年代開始睇邵氏、張徹導演嗰啲武俠片啊，嗰啲 male bonding 啊，黃宇啊、狄龍啊、張大偉嘅戲咧。
So I would say that the film, the Ba Xin and Yam Kim Fai pairing was very influential on me. But actually, I would say films that I like are from the early 70s, the Shaw Brothers movie, the Chang Che film starring, about male bonding, starring Wan Yu and and Tilong and those actors.
That was the glory time of Hong Kong films, you know, and we are out of time, but I would like to let's finish up with this last question, which is a good segue to what Director Kwan was saying about the glory days of those films that you watched, because this person asked you, because they just saw Anita, the film about William Fong. She says, it makes me miss that golden age of Hong Kong film and music. Yes. So what do you miss the most of that era？ 你啱啱講完，你睇完嗰啲咁嘅戲，你最掛住啲咩咧？以前嗰80年代嗰個高峰。
我覺得 instead of 掛住我成日都覺得我應該係感恩嘅。即係我真係覺得我80年代初做電影副導演，到80年代中開始拍戲。我全部係撞到香港電影最光輝嘅日子，所以我其實你話我仲爭啲咩？即係你 miss 啲咩係可能係要同今日嘅完全變咗嘅香港電影環境去咩？咁但係我覺得變咗就變咗，根本係唔同世代，所以我覺得。我調翻轉頭，我唔係 miss， 我係感恩，我識得。
I wouldn't say that I missed that period. Instead of missing, I would say that I'm very grateful for that time, because throughout my career, I somehow have been lucky enough to encounter the most sort of glorious period of Hong Kong cinema. So, you know, because if you say something like miss, then you're comparing sort of changes that have happened over the years. I don't think there's a point in making that comparison. So instead of saying miss, I would say I'm very grateful for that period.
I think we should be the ones grateful, because we have you here to talk to us, to share your personal stories and your experience in this film world. And not only did we have a small chance to get a glimpse into your process and the subtleties that you like to work with, the complexities of the characters that you're so good with, and also you being kind of a critical part of that era. We're talking about the golden era. Stanley Kwan is part of the golden era, and we are very, very appreciative of you sharing your films with us, and us being able to still watch them and still be able to unpack them in such deep ways. So thank you so much to Kwan Do-yin, and thank you for Kevin for helping us to share your homework. Would you like to say anything else? Any final words for Director Kwan? No?
Just good luck to everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us at this special event. Thank you, HIFF.
Okay, Kevin.
Hello. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. This concludes our conversation with Stanley Kwan. And thank you, Director Kwan, for donating your time to be a part of this year's Spotlight on Hong Kong. I love the conversation and your insight. I want to also give a thanks to Kevin Ma, my friend, for your excellent interpretation. I hope to see you in Udine next spring. And also thank, as always, to Felix Ma from Golden Scene for arranging all of this. Also, thank you, Crystal, for your excellent hosting. You are amazing. And mahalo to Director Jackal Sang and Grace Yu from HKETO SF for your perennial partnership with HIFF and our annual Hong Kong Spotlight. And we hope to do this all again in 2022, but this time in person.
Yes.
On behalf of HIFF, mahalo nui loa, and thank you very much.